another country is going to step in and put a stop to this, right? To the censorship, to this denying fundamental rights, and just taking a path, downright into totalitarianism. But if it's happening in every single Western democracy, who the heck do you think is going to come and bail us out? There isn't going to be anyone coming this time. It's not going to happen.
Right now, we have a special guest with us, Christine Anderson. She's a German politician who has served as a member of the European Parliament since 2019. She's representing the Alternative for Germany Party, the AfD. She was formerly an activist with the Pegida movement, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and became a member of the AfD in 2013, later serving as the party's group leader at the Limburg-Welberg District Assembly from 2016 to 2018. She's very outspoken. We're really happy to have her here. Please welcome to the show, Christine Anderson. Hi, Christine.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So we've been watching lots of you make a lot of ruckus, which is good for a politician going against the establishment and the status quo. And let me just ask you about the AfD. Now, the AfD takes a lot of criticism. They call it extreme right and far right, but it's always the same people, who are funding literal Nazis in Ukraine that call people like you, and you stood up against COVID, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the criticism you get at the AfD party?
Yeah. So, that's actually what they've been doing. I mean, ever since we were founded in 2013. Back then, the big issue was, the Euro crisis, that crisis we had. And we were, critical of the EU institutions as such. So we were called, haters of Europe and, the enemies of Europe. And we wanted to destroy Europe and, the whole shebang. But what is really happening is, we actually are advocating for things that the former Conservative Party, the Christian Democrats, advocated for, up until 15, 20 years ago. So, but they changed under Angela Merkel. So they became green and they became leftist kind of thing. So they surrendered all of their conservative values, their conservative policy points. And that kind of left the conservative side without representation. And that's where we came in, right? But it was also a threat to the establishment, to the narrative, to the agendas they were trying to push. So, and what do you do in cases like that? If you can't beat anyone, with arguments, because you have good arguments, you try the ad hominem attacks, and that's exactly what they're doing. So it started out with being called haters of Europe and, enemies of Europe. Then it moved on to xenophobe, Islamophobe in 2015, once Angela Merkel had ripped open the borders wide open. And and by this time, we're now the far right-wing extremists. But the point of the matter is they simply lack arguments. And they've been saying, they wanted to tear down our foundation by exposing our fallacies and everything. Well, I'm still waiting for them to do that. So up until this point, all they've got is pretty much, labeling us, calling us just about any name in the book. But it's really not working anymore. The people don't buy into that anymore.
So I've experienced, I would consider similar experience here in the United States. When I was advocating for free speech during COVID, I was called right-wing and extremist.
Yeah.
When I was advocating for bodily autonomy against mandated experimental vaccines and medical treatments, I was called extreme and right-wing. If you advocate for a closed border in the United States or an orderly process to immigration, you're called extremist and right wing, and if you're against war, I was against the Ukraine war and the Syrian war, and for this same things, I was called a Putin puppet. Right. I was called extreme right wing. So is those kind of the similar criticisms that you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it just goes to show, the hypocrisy of it all. Especially as you were just mentioning, you were advocating for bodily autonomy, right? And in opposition to the mRNA shots. Well, wasn't it the left that actually came up with that slogan, "My body, my choice"?
Yes.
But apparently, it's only "my body, my choice" when it's about killing unborn babies, right? But apparently, it does not pertain to what kind of substance you get injected into your body. So they're hypocrites, and like I said, they don't even see it anymore, right? So, but yeah, it's just crazy, and it's kind of ironic that whenever someone actually steps in and advocates for constitutional rights, fundamental rights, which by the way are rights that the citizens have to fight off an overreaching government. That's what fundamental rights are, right? But they were turned into privileges, and every time you advocate for fundamental rights, for constitutional rights, and all of that, you get labeled a right-wing extremist. So that's it's kind of interesting, but it all boils down to the fact they need to protect their agenda, and they cannot afford to have any dissenting voices, because that will shatter that will shatter their hopes that they will be successful in implementing their despicable illiberal totalitarian agenda. And that's the whole issue here.
Yeah, so I always considered myself a leftist and a liberal, but the establishment people who call themselves liberals and leftists are the exact opposite. It's exactly what you said. I call them illiberals. They're not liberal anymore.
Yes.
And that's where I think that there could be a great force where people who stand up for principles, constitutional principles on the left and the right can come together, because we agree about that. If you're I always thought if you're an actual liberal, you're for free speech, you're against censorship. But now
you would think so.
You would think so. But now the liberals in the United States and in Germany are the loudest purveyors and screaming for censorship and against bodily autonomy. And it's a really weird time. How do you think that happened? Which would be considered, normal liberal values got somehow twisted, and now they're considered extreme right wing. That's just it's happened. I mean, it's even worse in Germany than it is in the United States, if you can believe it.
Well, it starts off with the terminology here. The left, they're communists, point blank, right? And they kind of occupied the term liberal. Liberalism doesn't mean, what they're advocating for.
Correct.
So the left really, they are not liberal. The true sense of the word liberal is actually, liberal, free from the state, right? Free from government interference as much as possible. That's actually what liberalism means. So they hijacked that term, liberalism, but they aren't liberal, right? And the understanding of the left about free speech is they only allow free speech that is speech they like. But speech they don't like does not get to has the right to be spoken. And that's what we're seeing here. With all of these attempts to ban and censor pretty much, so-called hate speech and fake news and disinformation, misinformation and malinformation, right? These are being given labels and just being called, dis and malinformation. But it's all about censoring that speech. They don't want to hear it, and they don't want the citizens to hear it. Can you imagine the citizens heard common sense arguments and, they kind of went like, well, that makes a lot of sense, right? So that's why they have to ban it. And that is the most illiberal thing I can actually think of, to censor speech just because you don't like it. But all of these attempts, we're seeing now with all of the, on Twitter, the X-Files have shown that they just banned, whatever information there was to actually educating people on this during the so-called pandemic. But they're censoring speech, and they're trying to silence people. And the idiocy about that is they claim to do it to protect and to save democracy. The point is this: they are not afraid for democracy. They are afraid of democracy. And that's why they're doing that.
So it's the European Digital Services Act, right? Is kind of the big the monster in the room.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how you've tried to push back against it?
Oh yeah, I mean it's pretty much what is happening in every single Western democracy. The very same measures, the very same things are being implemented, and it all boils down to censoring speech. So what they don't want to hear is okay. Let's just start with the terminology. So there is now misinformation, there's disinformation, there's malinformation. Misinformation is wrong information that you provide, but you do it because you don't know better. You just made a mistake. You were mistaken. So it's involuntary wrong information that you just spread. Disinformation, on the other hand, is information. It's a false, factually false information, and you know it's false, and you spread it anyway. Let me give you an example for disinformation. The mRNA injections are safe and effective. That was disinformation. They knew it. And it came from all of our governments. They knew it was false information, but they said it anyway because they wanted pharmaceutical companies to make as much money as possible, never mind about the welfare of the recipients of these shots. And now we're down to malinformation. Malinformation are factually true statements, but they're harmful. They're deemed harmful. And they also have to be taken offline. So when they're posted on social media, they're required to take them down. An example for malinformation would be there is no such thing as transgender kids. Or another example would be trans women are men and nothing else. That is factually true information, but it's deemed harmful to their narrative. And that's why they have to take it down. And yes, they are taking it down. And now they passed bills, in Germany, you can get fined up to 10,000 euros if you misgender someone. So if you call a dude, right? 10,000 euros.
So you're pretty... The party, the AfD, is gaining a lot of popularity. I've seen polls where it has 20%. It's the second largest party. So they're still, even though you have that much popular support, you're considered the second largest party. They're still trying to isolate you, and they, I've read where other major parties won't form coalitions with the AfD, and doesn't that just go to show you how degraded the politics of Germany have become and the European Union?
Well, first and foremost, it shows one thing. My God, they are so stupid. They are so utterly stupid. Because, I mean, despite all of their efforts to make us go away, to shame us, to stigmatize us, to frame us, whatever. Despite all of their attempts, it is not only is it not working, the contrary is actually happening now. We are gaining support for the simple reason people beginning to realize that they're beginning to see in their everyday life that everything we have been saying ever since 2013 is now becoming a reality, and you can't deny it anymore. So we weren't making stuff up. We weren't fear-mongering, right? It is now in everyday life, the citizens have to deal with whatever we said. So that is one part of it. But the other part is their utter stupidity. So this is exactly what happened. So the more they try to label us, the more they try to shun us, the more they try to isolate us, the more they try to deny us our parliamentary rights of participation, the more support we gain. And I pray to God every single day that they will never figure out what it actually is they're doing wrong. Because, I mean, it's kind of like the same thing that worked with Donald Trump, right? The left, I mean, the Democrats, to this day, they haven't figured out what their biggest mistake was. But hey, I hope they never figure it out.
Well,
let them keep doing it. It's helping us.
Let me just say, I have to say this because the YouTube doctors have a different view on the COVID vaccine, that it was safe and effective. And if I don't let people know that they'll take my channel down. So I have to tell people, because of the censorship here in the United States, that I have to push back and let them know that according to the CDC and the FDA here in the United States, that the COVID vaccines are safe and effective. So just get that out there. But now that made me forget my next question. I wanted to make the connection that you kind of just touched on, that it wasn't just the Democrats who were, it seems what's happening in Germany kind of mirrors what's happening in the United States, that people who were for traditional, liberal values, like we've been talking about, free speech, anti-censorship, anti-war, bodily autonomy, free speech, all that stuff, they've tried to marginalize them. And so it wasn't just Democrats who came out against Donald Trump. It was called people in the Republican Party, the establishment Republican Party. They were called never Trumpers, right? So they're Republicans, but they were against Trump. So they were more aligned. That's how you had Kamala Harris touting the endorsement of Dick Cheney, who, when he left office, had an approval rating of around 10%. So Kamala went around campaigning with the Cheneys and touting their endorsements. And so it wasn't just the Democrats. So it seems the same thing's happening with the AfD in Germany, right? So it's people, it's the establishment basically on the left and the right coming together to try to silence you and marginalize you. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And there is actually, some things to unpack here. So you were saying what is happening in Germany is actually mirrored of things happening in the United States, but that's not all of it. The real issue that we're having here, it's happening in virtually every single Western democracy. Our freedom, democracy, and the rule of law are under attack everywhere, and that's the scariest part about this. If it was like one or two countries going rogue, right, then the peoples of these countries, they would have the hope that eventually another country is going to step in and put a stop to this, right, to the censorship, to this denying fundamental rights, and just taking the path downright into totalitarianism. But if it's happening in every single Western democracy, who the heck do you think is going to come and bail us out? There isn't going to be anyone coming this time. It's not going to happen. So at this point, all the peoples around the world, and especially in the Western democracies, we are all sitting in the same boat at this point. So we need to wisen up, and we need to understand the despicable agendas that are being pushed upon us. It has nothing to do with freedom, democracy, and a rule of law, but it has everything to do with totalitarianism. So, whether you take this mass illegal invasion that is happening everywhere pretty much, whether you take the whole transgender madness, whether you take, the climate change idiocy. So we're now need to save the planet. These are all programs that are being pushed to ultimately pretty much enslave every single human being on this planet, to make us a part of, there's even stealing our identity, right? Whether it's national, cultural identity, they don't even stop at the sexual identity anymore. So, and if you can be anything at any given time and even change that as you wish, who are you going to be in the end? You're going to be a nobody. You're going to be a blank slate. And that's exactly what the governments want from us, to have no roots, no families anymore, but to solely depend on the government. And you have no idea what people will do, for just a few calories once they're done with all the farmers, having to cull their cattle and taking away their prime land to put like these ridiculous solar panels up, and all for, that we want to save the planet. But when people are desperate enough, you have no idea what they're willing to do for just a few calories. And that's another issue. Our food supply. they are about to grab control of our whole food supply. So, I mean, Bill Gates is buying up prime farmland like crazy. Why do you think he's doing that?
My guess is because he's invested in fake meat. And
yeah, exactly.
He wants to
but don't believe for us exactly. So they want us to eat bugs and like this lab-grown meat, but don't believe for a second that for lack of a better term, I always call them the globalitarian misanthropists. Don't believe for a second that they will stop eating steak.
Right,
they
correct.
get to have steak.
Oh,
we are left with bugs. Well, thank you very much.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Toronto, Red Bank, New Jersey, Northampton, Massachusetts, Concord, New Hampshire, Oxnard, California, Rutherford, New Jersey, New York, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.